Morning, market chameleons, and soon to appear my favorite chameleon, Dimitri Pargamonic. How's everyone doing this morning?
Good morning, Will. How are you?
Good, good. I'm operate. Whoa. Yep.
What happened?
New computer. Lots of technical issues this morning, D.
Okay.
What are we going to deal with this morning? Unusual option volume here?
Yeah. I'm going to go over, we'll start out with the pre-market report, and I think I'll just do a review of the unusual options volume. We haven't looked at that report in a while. So I think those two things we'll take a look at. And of course, if you have any questions, let me know. I'm going to try to answer any questions along the way.
Excellent. Let's try to bring up this disclaimer. All right.
Yep. So before we get started, everyone, keep in mind, Will and I, Market Chameleon, we're not registered investment advisors. We're not broker dealers. We're not telling you what to do. We're just sharing ideas. If you need professional help, call your broker. That's what they're there for, to help answer your questions and provide you with guidance. There's the disclaimer.
Excellent.
Let's take a look at the pre-market report real quick. And we'll start out with the pre-market report. These are stocks trading in the pre-market hours. We have the most active stocks, biggest percentage gainers, biggest percentage decliners. I'm going to scroll down here and just take a look at how many made the percentage gainers list. So we see here 78 stocks on our percentage gainers list, 28 on the percentage decliners list. So from that perspective, looks like a little bit more of a bullish bias at the open. I'm going to take a look really quickly what's going on in the higher market cap stocks, but just that one right now, as I'm eyeballing it, the SPAC SPCE up 21%. And I know that these SPACs, they've been really getting hurt right during this sell-off. Will,
is that space company SPCE?
Yep, I think that's, yeah, let me take a look at it.
Oops. Yeah, no, the SPACs have gotten destroyed.
Virgin Atlantic Holdings yesterday closed $17.27. Trading in a pre-market hours, $20.93. That's up 21%. But if you just take a look at the year high low, 62.80, low 14.21. I know they've been really getting hurt, along with, the coins, the cryptocurrencies. Big sell off there. So maybe we're seeing, the tail end of that flush out. We'll see, but big rebound today in the morning, up 21.2%. Let me close this really quickly. Of course, you could, if you come down here, you could read any of the headline news, take a look at the minute-to-minute VWAP table in the pre-market hours, and this is what it looks like, the chart in the pre-market hours. So right here, I'm seeing VWAP pre-market hours, $20.65. So we're trading a little bit above that, $20.93, 6.4 million shares trading. I'm going to go right now and filter out the higher market cap stocks, see what's going on there. And let's just do that really quickly. Over 20 billion. So market cap over 20 billion. We got 20 that made the percentage gainers list, 7 on the percentage decliners list. Again, that looks more of a bullish bias at the open. Just scanning with my eyes, Netty's up 3.8%, but that's 13,000 shares trading hands, not so much, not a lot of volume there. The other one, Viacom, up 3.6%, and that I think has to do with the AT&T spinoff and some assets moving around with that. Coinbase up 3.1% in the pre-market hours and 145,000 shares. And this has also been, a pretty brutal sell-off in the cryptocurrencies in Coinbase. I think when they IPO'd, the initial indicating price was 250. They actually opened at 380. I think rallied the first hour, and then it's just been selling down since then. Yesterday, those cryptos, some of them were down like 50%.
It was a big whoosh. There was a big sell-off. I mean, if you have bids in, I think Bitcoin may have printed under 30,000, which is
it was down like
50% move off its high.
50%, yeah, decline off its high. A lot of them, some of them were down more. I think China came out with some news that you couldn't use cryptocurrencies as a substitute for currencies, but I don't know really if people have been doing that. I think people are just either using them as, speculative or storage of wealth, or, because I haven't really, even though Tesla said they'll accept Bitcoins initially they were going to accept Bitcoins as payment for cars, then they backed out of it. But I don't think there's a lot of people doing that anyway. And I think Cathie Woods yesterday came out and said that her target price on Bitcoin is still 500,000, and we're like at 40,000 now. You could go read her argument, but they're very volatile. But right today, Coinbase in a pre-market up 3.1%. And there you go. ARK Investment buys more Bitcoin on rough day. So that's Cathie Woods. If there are no questions in a pre-market movers, Will, I'm going to move on to the unusual option volumes.
Sounds good.
Okay. So let's take a look at the unusual options volume report. And just to set this up, what the idea behind unusual options volume is that when you're looking for certain trade ideas, people will scan for, well, where's their unusual trading? Because that could be an indicator something is going on and you want to go in there further and research it. Because if nothing's going on, there's no trading, then, there might not be an opportunity right now unless you kind of like discovered. But if there's something going on, there's trading, there might be some opportunity, especially if there's money flown into something. But the important thing to keep in mind is this: it's never a good idea just because there's unusual option volume or just because there's a stock going up to jump on it without doing further research. It's always important to then step back and what is the thesis, and understand what is the thesis behind the trade. What is the catalyst? If I do a trade, what is the catalyst for the stock to go up further in the future or to go down? All right. And you need to still do that research. This is just a starting point to look at where there's something unusual going on, to narrow down potential candidates. All right. So keep that in mind. If it's a biotech stock, maybe they're about to get, you think that the chances are high that they get an FDA approval, and if they do, then the stock can double or triple. That might be the thesis behind a certain move. Or maybe there's a company and they might be introducing a new product, and you think that this product has big potential, or there's earnings, but you still have to develop the thesis behind the trade. Never a good idea just to jump on price action or unusual option volume or unusual stock volume alone, because that will not work in the long term. So having said that, let's take a look at this table here, and then we'll talk about the filters. So this is a screener. This table here consists of stocks that had unusual options volume yesterday. When we talk about unusual options volume, then we have to kind of define what does that mean and why is it unusual. So when we look at and this is looking at options volume in aggregate, not a specific options trade, but options volume in total in that stock for the day. And what makes it unusual, and we're looking at the relative volume, is how you define it. So here, if we take what is the average volume that this stock trades per day, so if on average it trades 1,000 contracts, 1,000 option contracts per day, and all of a sudden maybe there's 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 contracts. If we compare it to the average, that's how we would say, okay, so this could be unusual because it usually doesn't trade that much. Okay, so you'd have to define what is unusual. the way we look at it is we look at the last 90 days, take the average daily option volume and compare it to the most recent volume. So for example, here, this is a stock HYRE, higher car. This is its market cap. And yesterday traded 29,829 option contracts, okay, in total. On average per day trades 1,348. And so we could see here, if we take yesterday's volume divided by the average, that's 22 times its average daily option volume. So that's why it makes this list, because that's some indicator maybe something's going on, right? That's unusual from what it trades on average. So that's one thing. Then we want to split up and say, okay, how can we get more insights into it? Because this is the total volume. So we could split it up into, well, how much of the volume is call volume versus put volume. So 65% of the contracts were in the calls, 35% of the volume were in the puts. So we know that more calls traded than more puts. But another way then to split that up is to say, well, how much total dollar value in calls versus puts? And that could be different because let's say, for example, only one call and one put traded in the stock. So that looks equal, right? 50% calls, 50% puts. But if one call traded for a penny and one put traded for $1, in dollar terms, more money was spent buying puts than buying calls, or the other way around, right? So in notional terms, where did more money get spent, on puts or calls? So that's the trade notional over here. So here we see that $3.3 million worth of calls traded versus $1.1 million worth of puts. So ratio 3-to-1. 3 times as much money went into the calls as went into the puts. So then we see, well, what did the stock do? We see what the options did, and we see that it was heavily weighted towards the calls relative to the puts. And what did the stock do? So we see here yesterday, the stock on the previous day closed at $14.65. The price went up to $17.23. So that stock was up 17.6%. So now we got two data elements now we're putting together, that the stock acted in a bullish manner, and then the options also kind of confirmed that as well. The order flow was moving in a bullish manner as well. Okay, we don't know why yet. We just know that's the price action. We know here, are there any events coming up? So here, May 13th, they already reported earnings. We're at May 20th, so it's not running up into earnings, because earnings have already a week ago have been announced, and it might be reacting still to what they said in the earnings. We'd have to go back and look, but we know it's not running up into that uncertainty, right? The earnings have been released. The other thing we put in is if we pick up any upcoming events, you'll see them here. Like, so for over here, RETA, it's a pharmaceutical. We see this one also already reported earnings, but something coming up June 2nd, we see that there's going to be a conference that they're going to be participating, Jefferies Virtual Healthcare Conference. So that might be some catalyst for movement, and you'd have to go do more research. But in these conferences, a lot of times, you might have the CEO or someone in a management position talking about their future outlook, their products. In a healthcare industry, they could be revealing new studies or results of studies, and that could be a potential catalyst for a bump. right? So you know something is coming up June 2nd. We don't know if it will be good news, bad news, or no news, but there's a potential for some news to move the stock coming up June 2nd. Okay, so that's what these here are for. Small indicators for you. You know, it's not a total research package, but small things to kind of pay attention to and look deeper into it. What about yeah?
How often is the open interest report updated?
So okay, so this isn't open interest. This is actual volume that we're talking about.
Yeah.
But open interest, and I'm going to do another report on open interest, is updated overnight by the Options Clearing Corporation. Options Clearing Corporation clears all options, right? All options on all the exchanges. They clear all the options. They update open interest overnight. It's based on settled trades at the end of the day. Then they take into consideration any assignments, exercises, splits, broken trades, adjustments, all that. At the end of the day, it's settled, and then overnight they process that information. The next day, you know, it's made available, and then we get it from our vendors. So it's a lot of questions about this. Where do I see live open interest? There's no live open interest because the Options Clearing Corporation doesn't calculate it live throughout the day. They don't know actually till the end of the day all the details to create that open interest, right? They don't know all the settled trades, broken trades, assignments, early exercises, because you have, I think, till 4:30 to push that in. After all that, then they process it overnight, and you know it the next day. So once a day, it's going to get processed, and we'll know it in the morning.
Excellent.
Following morning.
And this report is updated every 15 minutes, or?
Yeah, so this report is updated intraday because we're looking at volume. So these are actual options volume, not open interest, but just the trades being reported throughout the day. So we are in our market data. It's on a 15-minute delay. Then there's a process that starts to accumulate the trades and process them, and then make it available on this report. You know, so once it processes, you'll see it here. Another thing, some people think like right at 9:45 they're going to see something unusual option volume, but that it's not going to happen right away because we're not looking at a trade, we're looking at accumulation of volume, right? So there has to be enough volume, enough trading for it to be unusual. So unless there's a big block trade right at the morning, you're probably not going to see it because it has to accumulate, right? So people are putting in orders, and then if it accumulates to where the volume exceeds the average, that's when it starts to make the report. Okay, so that's, you know, some people like will email like at 9:45 and 2 seconds, I get an email. I don't see anything on there. Well, because nothing, you know, not enough trading has occurred. Okay.
Very cool.
So really quickly, we went over, you know, the stock market cap. We looked at the option statistics here. Then we looked at the option breakdown by dollar value, what the stock price is doing on a day. We looked at a couple of potential events that could make the stock move. And then lastly, here we have the implied volatility. And the implied volatility is important because it kind of gives us an indicator what people are doing as far as option premium goes. So here, for example, the implied volatility in HYRE is 132.5, and that's up 3.1% from the previous day. So when the implied volatility is moving up, right, what is our then inference is that more buyers of options than sellers. Think of it kind of like if the stock price moves up, then you could infer that there are more buyers of the stock than there are sellers of the stock. because then the prices are getting, buyers are pushing the prices higher. Implied volatility works similarly, where if the implied volatility is going up, then there are more buyers of option premium. It's not necessarily calls or puts, but just premium, meaning that people think that there's potential, there's more potential for volatility in either direction in the future. So when we see the implied volatility moving higher, more buyers of option premium than sellers. If it's going the other way, then there's more sellers of option premium than buyers going down. So that's a one-day move. But in general, where do we think this implied volatility is relative to historical levels? And there we look at the IV percentile rank. So even though it went up 3.1% yesterday, is 132.5 a high implied volatility, meaning our option premiums priced relatively expensive, or are they priced relatively cheap? And that we could look at the IV percent rank. So here, the IV percent rank, 81%. What does that mean? So 81%, it's looking at the implied volatility in the last 252 days, and it's looking each day at where did the implied volatility close at. And then it compares how many of the last 252 days where did the implied volatility close at below the current level. And that's 81%, meaning 19% of the time implied volatility was higher than 132.5, 81% of the time it was lower. So we're considering that more of an elevated implied volatility. So anything like 70% or higher, we're starting to say that's already starting to get more elevated, because 70% of the time the implied volatility trades lower. Okay, so these are indicators to you kind of what's going, besides the unusual option volume, a little bit more of a breakdown of what else is going on as far as the trading goes. So you got some statistics, you got some potential catalyst events, and then you could narrow this down and do further research. Another tab here we have is volume by moneyiness, and here it gives you a breakdown of the call volume, the put volume, the call trades notional, put trades notional, and total trades. So let's just take this one, for example, RETA, the pharmaceutical. We know that, it had a certain amount of calls that traded, but what is the breakdown? Because there's a difference between if you're buying at the money calls, out of the money calls, or in the money calls, right? So in the money calls behave more like the stock. So, if you go very deep into money, then you're buying a call that, can move one for one with the stock. At the money call, that's mostly premium. Out of the money call, that's all premium. So at the money call, you're paying premium, and it'll probably move like, start moving at a 50 delta. But the idea there is how much premium are people paying for the options, and where are they placing their bets? So not the money would be like right where the stock is. That's where the option, they're picking that strike. So if the stock is $50, at the money would be a $50 strike, right? So here in the call volume, we see 59% of the calls traded at the money, right? So that's so 59% of the options trades traded at the money call. Now 5% of the total volume were out of the money calls. So out of the money calls are people placing bets on strikes higher than where the stock is now, betting that the stock is going to move much higher before expiration, crossing those strikes. So an out of the money call would be, we consider anything 25 delta or lower would be an out of the money call. And in the money call, that's a strike where it's already below the spot price. So the stock already passed through that strike. And here we see 3% of the volume was in the money call. So this way you could kind of see, if you get a breakdown of the volume, where was most of the volume, and here at the money calls. Okay, so that's before you go to the options chain. You could check that really quickly. Where was most of the money being spent, right? Most of the money traded in the options, we see here at the money call, $867,000 worth of at the money calls traded. The next biggest is the at the money puts, $539,000 worth of at the money puts traded yesterday in our ETA. And then we could see a breakdown, 570 calls versus 539 puts. So this is just another view and breakdown of how the option volume traded. Okay. So you're going from the high level to a breakdown. Now, we could use some of these filters to look for something unusual as well. So for example, let's say we want to take a look at, and I'm going to just use these filters up top. And I'm going to look at, let's do the moneyiness. Okay, so I'm going to do the moneyiness. And let's see where we want to, where there are a lot of out of the money calls traded. So 75% of the volume was in out of the money calls. So there we have 3 of them, and these where this is where most of the volume, 75% of the volume, we could see here 94% were in the calls, and most of that were being placed on strikes that were above the current stock price. Okay, so that's one way to filter, but I'm gonna, and we could see here implied volatility was going up. So what's been going on is the assumption is that people are paying higher premiums for out of the money calls. I'm gonna filter this out. Let's go the other way. What about out of the money puts? Let's do 75%. So here, these are stocks yesterday that a lot of the volume, it had unusual option volume, and a lot of that was in the puts. Okay, so these are starting points. Of course, you want to kind of go take a look at, well, what might be the catalyst behind it? Why are people buying? Are they buying puts, selling puts? And is there a good reason to believe that the stock is going to go down further? Or is this, went down far enough? You still have to go and do that research, but you could see here, I'm just narrowing things down. Okay. Let me take a look at, I'm going to unfilter this. Let's take a look. Are there any questions here?
There were some questions. David, who's new on the chat, was asking, is open interest or volume more important when choosing an option? And then he had
right. So I don't think you could say that one is more important than the other one. It's just there are 2 different metrics that you look at. The volume is what's going on today where there's trading. The open interest will tell you the next day how much of that is still open, not closed out. Right. So the volume could represent people who are buying and selling and closing out the same day. So you're not going to know that until the next day where you see the open interest. Did the people who were putting on positions maintain those positions? Are they for the longer term? So that's what the open interest is telling you. The volume doesn't tell you that, because if you're buying a contract and selling the contract the same day, you're going to see that both those show up in the volume, right? So the volume will be reflective of both trades. The open interest will just tell you the next day how much open interest is left, where those positions have not been closed out yet.
Great.
It's telling you 2 different things. It's not, one is not more important than the other one. It's just telling you 2 different things.
Excellent.
Okay, well, we're right at 9:30, so if there's the last question, I'll take one.
I think we're good, D. I think my sound may be bad. Are you hearing rough sound from me?
It sounds okay to me.
All right, great. All right, well, everyone, awesome job, Dima. Thumbs up are always appreciated. A bunch of new chameleons who've been on the chat. We mentioned Discord a few times. If you want a link to the Discord, email me at williammcbride@gmail.com. I'll put that in the chat again. Dima, great job as always, buddy.
Great. Thanks everyone for joining. Stay safe out there. Have a good